It started out like any other quiet Sunday afternoon. The house was calm, filled with that soft hum of distant traffic and birds outside the window. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through a magazine I wasn't really reading, just passing time. My stepdaughter, Emily, had been upstairs in her room all morning. She's 16 now, curious, smart, a little moody like most teenagers, but we've always had a good connection. Since I married her mom 3 years ago, we've built something solid. Not perfect, but real. That day, though, something about her felt different. She came downstairs slowly, her socks making no sound on the wooden steps. When she reached the bottom, she stood there quietly, just watching me for a moment. I looked up and smiled, asking if everything was okay. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over, sat beside me, and leaned her head back against the cushion with a deep sigh. Then she turned to me, eyes serious but calm, and said, "I like secrets, especially with you." That one sentence hit me in a strange way. Not because of the words themselves, but the way she said it. There was something in her tone, soft, maybe a little playful, but also like she was testing something. It wasn't inappropriate or wrong, just layered. And I couldn't tell if she was being a typical teen trying to be mysterious, or if she genuinely meant something deeper. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was one of those quirky things teens say. But she didn't laugh back. She just looked at me, waiting. "What kind of secrets?" I asked, trying to keep it light. She smiled but didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up and said, "You'll see. But you can't tell Mom." Now that was the part that made my stomach twist a little. Not because I expected anything bad, but because when someone, especially a teenager, says not to tell a parent, it puts you in a weird place. I felt protective, cautious, but also curious. She wasn't acting scared or upset, which ruled out anything too serious, but I could tell it mattered to her. Emily walked off toward the kitchen, and I stayed there, caught between brushing it off and following her to see what she meant. That one sentence replayed in my head again and again. Asterisk. I like secrets. Especially with you. Asterisk, was it something innocent? A surprise? Or was there something else going on beneath the surface? That moment changed everything. It was the start of something I didn't see coming, and from that point on, nothing in our house felt quite the same. As the hours passed, I began to notice small things. Quiet exchanges, missing items, moments where Emily would glance at me like she was waiting for me to put the pieces together. I didn't know it then, but what she was hiding would soon pull me into something far more complicated than I ever imagined. And it all began with that one quiet afternoon. I sat there for a few more minutes after she walked off, just staring at the hallway where she disappeared. I kept thinking maybe I was overreacting, reading too much into something small. But something in my gut told me this wasn't just a throwaway comment. Emily had always been clever, a little more observant than most kids her age. She noticed things people didn't think she saw. Maybe that's why her words felt so heavy. I finally got up and walked into the kitchen, expecting to see her grabbing a snack or maybe texting on her phone. But she wasn't there. The back door was open slightly, letting in a warm breeze. I peeked out and saw her sitting on the porch steps, legs crossed, staring into the yard. She was holding something in her hands. A small notebook, maybe a journal. She noticed me but didn't say anything. Just gave a small nod and looked away again, like she was deep in her own thoughts. "You okay?" I asked, leaning against the doorway. She shrugged, then said, "Do you remember last year when we went up to the lake house and Mom forgot the keys?" I nodded. "Yeah, we had to break in through the kitchen window. You thought it was the coolest thing ever." Emily smiled faintly. "That was our first secret. Just you and me. We didn't tell her how we got in." That was true. We never mentioned the window, just said we figured it out. It was harmless, kind of funny. But now she was bringing it up like it meant more than I'd realized. "I like that," she said quietly. It made me feel like I could trust you. There was a weight to her words, like she was building up to something. But before I could say anything, she stood up and walked past me back into the house, leaving the notebook on the porch step. I waited a few seconds, then picked it up. The cover was plain. No name or decoration, just a faded blue. I didn't open it. Felt like I shouldn't, but I couldn't ignore the strange timing. She left it there on purpose. That much I was sure of. Back inside, Emily was already upstairs again. The house felt different, quieter, heavier somehow. I put the notebook on the kitchen counter and tried to focus on something else, but my mind kept circling back to her words. I like secrets, especially with you. And now this journal. Was she trying to tell me something without actually saying it? Or was it some kind of test? Over the next few days, Emily started acting more distant around her mom, but she still looked at me like we were in on something together. Little things started happening. I'd find notes slipped under my office door with odd little drawings or short sentences like, "Don't forget," or asterisk, "It's starting." Asterisk when I'd ask her what they meant, she'd just shrug and smile. I wanted to bring it up to her mom, but how could I explain it without sounding paranoid? There was no clear sign of trouble, just enough to keep me guessing. And the more I tried to figure it out, the more tangled things became. I didn't know what Emily was hiding, or why she picked me to be part of it. But one thing was becoming clearer each day. This secret wasn't just a game anymore. The notebook stayed on the kitchen counter for 2 days before I finally opened it. I told myself it was just curiosity, but deep down I knew it had turned into something more than that. Emily had left it for a reason. She wanted me to look. Still, I waited, hoping maybe she'd bring it up herself, explain whatever this secret was that she kept circling around. But she didn't. Instead, she kept acting normal in front of her mom, helping with dinner, chatting about school, but with me it was different. Quieter. More intentional. When I finally opened the notebook late one evening, the house was still and silent. My wife was asleep, and Emily was up in her room with the door closed. The first few pages were blank, and then in neat handwriting there were short paragraphs, journal entries. They weren't dated, but each entry had a title, almost like chapter names. One read, asterisk, the night I heard them talking. Asterisk, another asterisk, she lied to both of us. Asterisk, as I read further, it became clear this wasn't just creative writing. These were real events, or at least they felt that way. One entry mentioned her mother being on the phone late at night, whispering. Another talked about a strange man who visited once when I was away for work. A man she said her mom acted nervous around. Then there were more personal ones. One entry said, asterisk, I thought he'd be just like the others. But he's not. He listens. Asterisk, I wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but it struck me hard. The tension wasn't just about her and me anymore. It was something deeper, something she was trying to sort out on her own. The pages hinted at trust issues, confusion, and pieces of a puzzle I didn't know I was part of. Over the next few days, I couldn't unsee what I'd read. I watched my wife more closely, started noticing how she'd avoid certain topics, how quickly she changed the subject if Emily came up. I even caught her deleting messages on her phone once, but I didn't say anything. Not yet. I didn't have enough. Meanwhile, Emily kept leaving small clues. A post-it note with "It's not what you think" stuck to my laptop. A piece of paper left in the mailbox with a hand-drawn map of our neighborhood and one house circled in red. The same house where I'd once seen a strange car parked when no one was supposed to be home. I started to feel like I was being pulled in 2 directions. Emily wanted me to uncover something, but without giving it all away. My wife seemed like she was hiding something too, but I couldn't prove it. And I was stuck in the middle, trying to protect everyone without knowing what the real danger was. The biggest question kept circling in my head. Was Emily trying to warn me about her mom? Or was it the other way around? And with every step I took toward the truth, it felt like I was moving deeper into a story I wasn't meant to find. I couldn't sleep. Every night felt heavier than the last, like something was closing in. Emily barely spoke anymore, but her eyes said enough. She watched me closely like she was waiting for me to figure it all out. And my wife, she was trying hard to keep everything looking normal. Too hard. Smiling too much. Asking too many questions about where I'd been, who I talked to. It wasn't like her. She used to be relaxed, open. Now she seemed tense, like she was covering something. The air in the house felt thick with things unsaid. One night, just after 2 a.m., I heard footsteps. I was lying in bed, eyes open in the dark, and the creaking on the stairs was soft but steady. I slipped out of bed quietly and followed the sound down the hall. Emily was standing by the front door, fully dressed, backpack over her shoulder. When she saw me, she froze. "Where are you going?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She looked at me unsure, then whispered, "I have to show you something. But we have to go now. Before she wakes up." My heart was pounding. I didn't ask questions. I just grabbed my keys and followed her out into the night. The streets were empty, dim orange light from the street lamp stretching over the quiet pavement. She led me 2 blocks down to the same house she'd circled in the map, the one with the blue shutters and overgrown lawn. I didn't know the people who lived there, or if anyone even did. Emily pulled a small flashlight from her bag and led me around to the back gate. "I saw her come here last week," she whispered. "She met someone. They were arguing." "Your mom?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. She nodded. "He gave her something. A small box. She told him never to come to the house again." The gate creaked open, and we slipped through the overgrown yard. My mind was racing. What was she hiding? And why was Emily so determined to expose it? We reached a side window, and Emily pointed to a crack in the frame. "I heard them through here." He called her by a different name. That stopped me cold. A different name? I was about to ask what it was when lights flicked on inside the house. Emily grabbed my arm and pulled me down. We crouched low beneath the window as shadows moved inside. We couldn't see faces, but we heard voices, low, tense. And one of them was definitely my wife's. "She can't find out," a man's voice said. "She won't," my wife replied. "As long as he doesn't start asking questions." My stomach dropped. I didn't know what they were hiding, or who the man was, but it was clear now that I was involved in something bigger than I imagined. And Emily, she'd known all along. The secrets, the notes, the warnings, it all led here. But the real question was, how much more was she keeping from me? The voices inside the house faded for a moment, then silence settled like fog. Emily and I stayed crouched, barely breathing. I felt her hand trembling slightly against my arm, but her eyes were locked forward, focused, intense. She had known. She had planned this. But what neither of us expected came next. A second figure stepped into view. From our angle, we could only see part of his face in the light, but it wasn't the man from before. This one was younger, maybe in his 20s. He looked nervous, pacing back and forth. Then we heard him say, "It's not safe. He's asking too many questions. If he finds out who you really are." That was when it all snapped into place in my head. They weren't just hiding something from me. They were hiding who my wife really was. That second name Emily had mentioned. It wasn't just some alias. It meant my wife had a life before me, maybe even a whole identity that I knew nothing about. Emily leaned in closer and whispered, "That man, the one who came before? He's not just some guy she knew. I think he's her brother." Her brother.
Ist der Herr confused?
She told me she was an only child. Emily nodded. She told me that too. But I found a picture in her old photo album. It was torn in half. But I matched it with another one I found in her drawer last year. It was the same man. And in the photo, she wasn't using her real name. The door inside the house opened suddenly, and all three figures stepped outside. We ducked lower into the bushes as they crossed the porch. The younger man was holding a silver briefcase. My wife whispered something to him, and he gave a short nod before walking quickly down the driveway toward a black SUV. The older man followed close behind. She stayed behind, standing under the porch light, staring off into the night. Emily pulled me back toward the gate, urging me to leave before we were seen. We moved in silence until we reached the edge of our street. That's when Emily finally spoke again, her voice shaky. "She's not who you think she is," she said. "And I think that guy in the car. I think he's not just her brother. I think he's my real father." My chest tightened. "You're saying she's been lying about your dad this whole time?" I asked. She nodded, eyes wide. "She told me he died in an accident when I was little, but I overheard them talking once," she said. "He doesn't get to take her from me again." Everything I thought I understood about my marriage, about my family, was crumbling fast. My wife had lied. Emily had been warning me for weeks, maybe longer. And now we were wrapped in something that had clearly been buried for years, lies, secrets, people from the past who weren't supposed to come back. But if Emily was right, what else hadn't we uncovered yet? We got home without saying another word. My mind was racing, trying to catch up with everything Emily had just revealed. My wife, someone I had trusted completely, had kept a second life buried under years of silence. And now not only was she hiding her real identity, but she had also lied about Emily's father, a man we just watched walk away with a briefcase like something out of a spy film. But it wasn't fiction. It was our life unraveling. The next morning I confronted her. I waited until Emily left for school, then sat across from my wife at the kitchen table, holding the blue notebook in my hands. She looked at it for a long time, then finally met my eyes. There was no panic in her face, just quiet resignation. "You've been reading it," she said softly. "I had to," I replied. "You've been hiding things. About Emily. About yourself. About everything." She exhaled slowly, then nodded. "You're right. And I was hoping it would stay buried. But I knew it wouldn't." I asked about the man from the house. She looked away for a moment, then whispered, "His name is Daniel. He's Emily's father. My ex. And the younger guy? My brother," she said. "He's the one who helped me leave that life." The room was still for a long moment. She finally spoke again. "When Emily was a baby, Daniel got involved in some dangerous business. Money laundering, fake IDs, smuggling, things I didn't know about until it was too late. I took Emily and ran. Changed my name. My brother helped me disappear. I thought we were safe. But you kept all of this from us," I said. "From me. From your daughter. I didn't want her to grow up afraid," she said, her voice breaking now. "I didn't want her to know her father once threatened to take her away if I ever tried to leave." That hit hard. All the clues, all the secrets, they weren't part of a game. They were Emily trying to make sense of the pieces she'd gathered on her own. And in her heart, she'd started to trust me more than the one person who was supposed to protect her from the beginning. Then came the final twist. Just as the truth settled between us like a heavy fog, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a plain envelope on the porch. No one in sight. Inside was a photo, an old one. My wife, Daniel, and me. I was in the background, blurry but unmistakable. It was taken years ago, long before I ever knew her. My hands went cold. I showed her the photo. Her face went pale. "I don't understand," she whispered. But I did. Somehow this wasn't just about her past. It was about mine too. I had been part of this story far longer than I realized. And someone out there hadn't forgotten. I stood there holding the photo like it was burning through my hand. That image changed everything. I remembered the place vaguely. It was a market I visited once during a work trip years ago, long before I met my wife. I never noticed the people in the background, never imagined one of them would become part of my life. But someone had that photo all this time, waiting to send it when the timing was just right. My wife stared at it, speechless. I could see it unsettled her as much as it did me. "Do you think Daniel sent it?" I asked. She shook her head.
No.
"He wouldn't do it like this. If he wanted to scare us, he'd be more direct." We sat in silence, the weight of the past and present pressing down on us. Then I looked at her and said something I never thought I'd have to say. "We can't keep this from Emily anymore." That night we told her everything. Every piece. The truth about her father, her mother's real name, the years they spent hiding, and even the photo that somehow linked me to all of it. Emily didn't cry. She listened quietly, eyes wide but calm, as if she had already sensed more than we ever gave her credit for. When we finished, she asked just one question. "Are we safe now?" I didn't have a perfect answer, but I told her what I believed. As long as we're honest with each other, we're stronger than whatever's out there. In the days that followed, my wife called her brother and cut ties with Daniel for good. We agreed to meet with someone who could help us legally sort out any hidden past that might still affect our future. My wife started using her real name again, not as a sign of giving up her safety, but reclaiming who she really was. Emily, surprisingly, handled the changes with a kind of strength I didn't expect. Maybe it was because she'd been carrying parts of the truth alone for so long that finally having answers felt like freedom. The photo still lingers in my mind sometimes. I never did find out who sent it. Maybe it was someone trying to help, or someone reminding me that the past has strange ways of circling back. But I realized something important through it all. Secrets might start out as protection, but over time, they become barriers between the people who need each other most. Our family isn't perfect. We still have healing to do. But now there are no more quiet looks, no more hidden notes, no more pretending. Emily and I still share secrets, but the kind that build trust, not break it. In the end, what started with a single sentence, "I like secrets, especially with you," led us to a truth that none of us could hide from. And that truth, as complicated as it was, brought us closer than any lie ever could.